another episode of Tectonic Takes. Obviously, it's me and Devon here today. Ivan is busy. He's busy. Um, if you know, you know. But Devon, how you doing today?
Dude, it's been a while. I'm feeling good right now. I've been spending the off season golfing and having a little bit of fun and working. So it's been a nice off season, but coming back into a podcast, I feel pretty rusty. I don't know about you, Abram. How do you feel?
No, it's been a while, man. Like I don't even know where I put my microphone. I kind of just like set up the camera. I didn't even have the password to, do the recording in the first place. Yeah, I see you have a Bay FC jacket, or at least that's what it looks like.
I
Um,
do, yeah. I want to go see a couple games this coming season, dude. I'm really excited for the team.
I am too. Like, obviously, it's going to be hard to balance them with the Quakes, and I think we're in the same boat where we're going to prioritize the Quakes no matter what. But it's really exciting to have another team in the Bay, and they're not going to play the Quakes, so there's no reason to have to pick one or the other. So yeah, I mean, it's a very exciting time for U.S. soccer, but also soccer in the Bay. It's a great time. But so as we're recording on December 1st, the roster moves just came out today. What are your overall thoughts?
I'm actually not upset at any of the roster moves. This is Lucci's very first season, understanding who he has as players, what he wants as a team for the team, who he wants to get rid of, and I think the decisions he's made are in general pretty good. I think there's a couple players where we kind of wish would have exercised their options. Like I know a couple of fans in our Discord were saying like they want Mensa back. It's going to be tough without the Mensa Rodriguez, tandem slash duo. I think a lot of fans are going to miss that unless they sign him back. Unless they sign him back, he's only testing out free agency. It's not a confirmation that he's officially gone. But one of those players is definitely Mensa and Trauco. No one expected to see Trauco on a free agency list this year. So I don't know, man. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's promising. We have officially signed Rodriguez back, and there's no big announcement for that, it seems, or maybe there was and I missed it. But that was the main thing that I wanted to see to have Rodriguez back. Obviously, he had a great partnership with Mensa, and like you said, it's not confirmed that Mensa's gone, but it's not looking good in terms of his return. I've heard things about like his family not really enjoying San Jose and preferring Ohio, where he was before, which is fair. I mean, I don't know what's going on in Ohio, but you know,
A lot of things happen in Ohio.
yeah, I guess they find that fun. But that's neither here nor there. I do hope that we sign Mensa back because I thought that he was a great addition to this team. And we'll get into the roster moves, more in depth in a minute and talk about our thoughts on that. Um, but Devin, our good friend Hameen from the Tecontex Discord, he put together a survey, and we're gonna go over some of the results from said survey.
Let's do it.
Um, yeah, so I'm looking at it now, and I'm like kind of disappointed in our fan base. Hameen, did a good job. So I'm obviously not disappointed in Hameen's work here. However, I just think some people just don't understand what's going on. So
Well, let's
first of
let's
all,
go through it.
I'm gonna quiz you on this, right? So
All right.
the prompt was, who do you think was the worst signing of 2023? And there are one, two, three, four, five players. Name those five players for me right now.
For the worst players of 2023.
Yeah, these are the ones that people input as their worst player for 2023, and each of
Okay, so
you
for
have at least two. At least
for
two people.
context, was this I can't remember when this was made. Was this made like after we got eliminated or was this before?
Yeah, like I think maybe it started before the Kansas City game, but it definitely ran through past that.
Because
I'm not really good.
judging by that context, I want to say that Ayo Akinolo is one of them.
Yeah,
After
yeah,
that, after that Honduran friendly game, I don't know. That was one of them, right?
yeah.
Um,
We got one
second one, Cade Cowell. Fans were not impressed with him.
signing. So it's a new player that we brought in.
Oh, signing. Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. Ooh, Michael Baldissimo. Tommy Thompson was technically a signing this year, so I'll
I
put
guess
him on the list, even though I'm sure fans, didn't think of him as a signing, but
no.
he was. Um, I can't think of anyone else. Not everyone was that bad. Who are the other three players?
Okay, so I'm gonna start from the most votes to the least. So 55.3% of people said that Ayo Akinola was the worst signing of 2023. Real quick, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's a pretty big majority of fans.
55% is over half the Quakes fans, and
Yeah.
that's
Who
what
answered? Yeah.
that's stretched out to five players, and one person got over half the vote.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not too upset by that. I've we only saw 15 minutes of him total, like in the regular season, and
Yeah.
then like 45 minutes in that one friendly. So I could see where fans are coming from when they say Iowa Canola is probably their least favorite signing. But I kind of feel bad for the guy because he's still so young and he didn't have much time to adapt into the team.
Yeah.
But that said, he's back on Toronto's roster, so they can have fun with with him however they want.
I really hope that Ayo Akinola is not a Tectonic Ticks fan and just like, oh, I wonder what they're saying about me after I left. 55.3% of them that you should
If you see
never.
this, I'm sorry, Iowa.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard that he's a great guy, but that's pretty much all he was. He didn't see much of the field. Um, yeah. So the second place is, I think, again, unsurprisingly, with 29.8% of the vote, Michael Baldissimo.
That's fair. That's fair. And I
Think,
think we're gonna go through this in a little bit, but it's surprising that he beats a couple other players on next season's roster list. They've released the roster, and he's one of those guys, and I'm a little surprised by that.
yeah,
Let's go to the third player.
I am surprised that we still have him as well. So the third player with 6.4% of the vote is Jonathan Mensah.
Mensa. Now that's a
Right.
surprise. That's a
That's what I'm saying.
surprise.
Like,
We know he had that little scuffle or whatever it was with Lucci, but I I don't think he was that bad of a player.
also, as far as I know, right, this is the people inputting these votes. They get one vote, right?
Right.
So instead of Ayo Canola, instead of Michael Baldissimo, the player that they thought was the worst, they only get one vote, and they said Jonathan Mensah. That guy is so bad that
So here, try to play both, devil's advocate and listening to both sides. I can kind of see where he's coming from, or where some of those fans are coming from, and in that the first couple of games back after several missed games, Jonathan Mensah had several significant errors in the back line, and maybe that's what they were like. Oh, well, Jonathan Mensah doesn't deserve to be on the team because of all that, because of everything that he did wrong during those couple of games. But that's the only reason that I can think of, like as to why they voted him out.
yeah, because he was solid. Other than that, and even in those games, there were good moments. He did cause a few penalties, and we have to admit that. But that still doesn't make him below, Michael Baldissimo and Ayo Akinola. And those names we expected to be here, but Jonathan Mensah is a wild answer. Okay, so I'm gonna go with we're gonna go to the next one. These two are tied for last with 4.3% of the vote, and I'm gonna go with the one who I think deserves it more, and then the one I think deserves it the least.
Okay,
So first, I'm gonna say uh, Matthew Hoppy with 4.2% of the vote. What do you
interesting.
have?
I don't know what to think about that. Kind of just like Ayo Akinole, he didn't get much time to prove himself into the roster, and the time that he got here, he actually made some significant contributions, and we'll kind of touch on this more as we go through the podcast with in regards to the roster rules or the roster changes.
Mm-hmm.
I had I thought of Hoppy as one of those game changing players, especially like one of the biggest examples was the game versus Nashville. he had that 15 minutes to change the game, and he put one in the back of the net. So um, I don't really see Hoppy as one of those negative players. He scored more goals in like 3 games than Cade Cowell did all season.
Yeah, and like I've been vocal about my thoughts on Hoppy. You and I have had discussions about Hoppy off the podcast. Um, I'm not a fan. I don't think that I wouldn't have signed him again. And especially because we'd have to buy him, and it would have made him really expensive. And I didn't think that he warranted that kind of price tag. But I don't think he was the worst signing. That's ridiculous. We got him for 200,000 in total. He had no impact on the cap space because it was U21 initiative. Uh, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But so the one player who is tied with Matthew Hoppy, I think, is even more ridiculous. And I can't believe that not just one person but two voted for this guy, Daniel Mooney.
Mooney hasn't had many opportunities on the field, right? And
No,
especially since you're the Quakes 2 guy, I don't think he deserves that rep.
no, at all. I'm hating on Hoppy, but Muni should know be he shouldn't be here at all. Those two guys are just like I don't know what they're watching, and maybe they think that maybe like because he didn't have a lot of playing time that he's the worst signing of 2023. But that's a ridiculous logic. And
Right,
also
it's still a stretch.
when he's played, he's been good. He's super fast. He jumps high. He scored 2 goals in preseason to tie and win us the match. That alone makes him not the worst. Um,
Right. Yeah, and the
before he
games the
even
games he
signed a
had, like,
contract, before he even signed a contract, he had scored 2 goals for the club. That's
I'm
ridiculous.
surprised they didn't even put like Cam Sealy because he's only had like 5 or 10 minutes total with the team and like in his
Right.
career.
And like I'm a big Cam Sela supporter, and I do hope that we pick up, we somehow sign him back. But Daniel Mooney has been better than Cam Sealy. For this team. In a few minutes that they've had, Daniel Mooney has shown, he's a special player, and there's a reason that we drafted him. Um, but yeah, that just shows what the fan base thinks of the signing that we've made so far. But let's go
Those
over
are
to
some
the best
tectonic
signing.
takes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said those are some tectonic takes right there.
Those are some tectonic takes indeed. So let's go to the best signings. Who, in your opinion, are the one, two, three, four best signings that you think people pick?
I want to say first best signing would be Rodriguez, hands down. Actually, no, sorry, not first.
Rodriguez was
Second.
signed the season before.
Was he signed? Oh, that's right. We had this extension.
Yeah.
I would have still said Rodriguez, but anyways, Danielle is probably the top signing. Everyone is in hands down agreement on that.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't even remember who we signed early this season. Like it's been so long,
It,
and then like the MLS postseason isn't even over yet, and that's how long it feels.
right.
So Daniel first. If I could just take a look here at the players. Does a couple count as this year or last year?
No, a couple last year.
Okay. Um,
If you want, you can give up, and I'll give you the rest of them.
I want to get one more here. I want to
Okay.
get one more. Carlos Grezzo. Carlos Grezzo is probably in the top 5, right?
Carlos Grezzo was a signing that we made. All right. So the 4 best signings, according to Quakes fans of 2023. So at first place, 42 people, which is funny because that's his number, said that Danielle is the best signing of 2023, which you can't really argue with. That he was an amazing signing.
Look, even MLS when they announced Berkey as the MLS goalie of the year, goalkeeper of the year, they couldn't even put because like they listed a bunch of stats right for Berkey, and they couldn't even put like what positions Berkey was in those stats because they were so low on that tier. And
Yeah,
the person who beat Berkey in those stats was Danielle. And
yeah,
even Daniel himself in Instagram, I think he took to Instagram and was like, dude, this is like completely unfair. Like they're
yeah.
just going to put any random European player who comes to MLS and make them the best signing.
Right, and it's definitely an issue that this league. It's not a new issue. The David Beckham rule in the first place, that's where it started, and it's continued to this point, where those players get a huge bias. Also, playing devil advocate, you have to kind of give awards to players on the best teams. St. Louis has been one of the best teams in MLS, and Berkey has been a huge part of that. So it's not like Berkey is a slouch, but like we're talking about best keeper, it's Danielle. Um, and 89.4% of the fan base agreed, um,
That's a lot.
which doesn't leave much room for the other three. But we're going to go down the list anyways. So with 6.4% of the vote, up next we have Carlos Grezzo.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
There's a
I
lot
think.
of there's a lot of back and forth in the Tectonic Takes Discord server, where a lot of fans are like, I think he's one of the best players of the season. He helped us out so much defensively and in our midfield. He worked well with Jackson, and then there's other fans who are like, no, I disagree. He doesn't. He lost the ball too much, or he did this or that. Something too. It's just like too negative in the season, or he didn't make a big enough impact for a highly paid designated player.
Yeah, and I think that those comments do have some place at the table when we're talking about our record transfer signing. Um, but it's hard. It's always going to be hard for a center defensive mid to wow you. Um, just the name of the game is they make an impact and it's quiet. Uh, it if he's doing a good job, you shouldn't really see him. Um, but the way that he works, the way that Grizzle likes to operate, he's not a aggressive center defensive mid like Judson, who kind of just like wherever the ball is, Judson is there too. Guezo is kind of anticipating the next step and kind of waiting in the shadows, waiting to cut the pass out. And when you play like that, it's harder to read, especially for soccer fans who aren't as well versed in the game and tactics and those kind of things. So he was quietly one of the best players this season, in my opinion. But anyways, we'll go on to the next one. These two are tied. Um, it's Matthew Hoppe and Jonathan Mensah, who, if you'll
Oh,
recall, are also voted
the
for
worst
worst
players.
signings of 2023. Um,
It's a
and I'll
lot of
say
disparity.
they each have 2.1% of the vote. And I think I know exactly who voted Matthew Hoppe as the best signing of 2023. Um, but I mean, you just if you were signed in the same window as Danielle, you're always going to have a hard time getting on this graph. So that's totally understandable. So
There's the
we
next
also
one.
did a tier list of the players. I'm curious. There are two players in S tier, and I think it's pretty obvious. Which two are in S tier, in your opinion?
Well, if I were to choose two players, I think it's an obvious choice. One we've already discussed is one of the best signings this year, and that's Danielle. And the second one was an MVP candidate of Christian Espinosa. I think there could be talks of a third player on the S tier, and that would be Rodriguez, given his impact. But I know a lot of fans did not like his attacking and dribbling approach as a center back. So we'll leave that as is. We'll get back to him in whatever tier he's up next. But I'm assuming those are the two.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I would have put Rodriguez in S tier because he was just as vital to this campaign. Sometimes not through the whole season, but as Christian Espinosa. And it's hard to say that because Christian Espinosa scored so many, assisted so many, but Rodriguez was huge in interceptions and tackles made, and also just advancing us up the field. Like everything other, it's hard to when you're a defensive player. It's hard to make a case for how good of an impact you have on the field, because it's not always uh, depicted with numbers. But Rodriguez and just like the vibe he brings, honestly, I think that he kind of lifted up the whole team and brought a lot of energy to the back line, similar to Nathan when he was first signed. And I'm 100% sure that a lot of people would have put Nathan in S tier that first season too.
100%. And I would agree with that. If Nathan wasn't hurt, I think he'd be one of the better defenders. Although the partnership with he and Rodriguez, and this has come up a lot, probably wouldn't have been the most healthiest because both of them like to dribble up the field as center backs. Both of them like to make crazy attempts and tackles. And I know Nathan loves getting those yellow cards, and having both of them miss games and stuff would hurt our depth. But yeah, I would agree that Nathan would have been up there in the top tier list for sure.
Right. So I have a few more questions. Where would you have put our star boy, Cade Cowell, from S to F tier?
From S to F,
I don't know if you did this quiz, so you probably already answered that question. But
I did the quiz, but I think this comes with majority decision or majority choices. So I would have put him in D tier.
C tier,
I don't D,
D. Okay.
so below C, and just above F. I don't think he was deserved of F tier because he did have his moments and he started a heck of a lot of games, and he joined the national team for a little stint. So I mean, I don't think it's deserved of an F tier, but I think it wasn't enough anywhere near C tier.
Yeah. So he ended up in C tier, which is where I put him. Um, and there's a lot of players here that had mixed seasons. He is accompanied by Jermio Montero, Tanner Beeson, Judson, Tommy Thompson, Useni Buddha, and Daniel Muni. Um, I kind of because I think his upside kind of brings him to that point, because when he was with the national team, there was a lot of talk about how much we miss him and how much we didn't realize we would, because that pace does, stretch the defense. Uh, and he had a lot of impact that didn't necessarily result in a lot of numbers for him. So the goals and assists, probably don't reflect how impactful he was for this Quakes team. And it's unfortunate, but I also, we have to admit that he wasn't as good as we want him to be, and especially because he's a young player, we want him to be progressing upwards and getting more goals year after year. But they're kind of going down and down, so that's disappointing to see, obviously.
Right. And I think you made a good point in that Kate Cowell, when he was gone to the U.S. national team, we had missed his pace up top, and a lot of things. There's a lot of fans that miss that aspect of his game, and his off the ball runs, off the ball movement generates a lot of space for not just the strikers, but Jamiro Montero, other midfielders, Nico Tsikeras, whoever wants to get forward, and Cage stretches that space out for the midfielders. He does that a lot, and his presence on the field is enough to make a successful attacking uh, run for the team. So
Yeah,
yeah, no, you're absolutely
his
right.
presence makes an impact for sure. Uh, we did a lot of podcast episodes with fans of opposing teams, and a player that they were always worried about was Kate Cowell. And as someone who watched them week in and week out, I was like, why? Why? He's not gonna do much. He's gonna kind of dribble it out of bounds. But they were scared of him because they know what he could do. And they've seen the highlights. They've seen what he does with the U20s in the U20 World Cup. And I mean, from that perspective, I definitely understand, because you don't have there's no player in the league that can run with him or push him off the ball. You know what I mean? And that is a scary aspect of the kid's game, and that's why he's so highly touted. But I did want to ask you about one more player, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to guess where he ended up. Jack Scan, somebody who filled in for Cade Cowell after he was called up, and unfortunately didn't get back into the team because of injuries, but definitely was a surprise for a lot of people this season.
Well, as you personally know, I'm a big fan of Jax Kane, and I really hope he does come back to the team. That said, My personal position, I would have put Skane at either B or C tier. I don't know if he showed enough for B tier or if he's played enough games for fans to feel comfortable putting him B tier. So my prediction for him would be C tier. Although personally, I would have put him at B tier, following his impact when we played in a 3-5-2 formation.
No, yeah, for sure. I agree that because he was versatile as well. His pace provides a lot of danger on the field. Like pace is one of those things where if you have it, you've been blessed by God. I think a lot of people were surprised by the amount of pace that he has, but personally, watching him with Quakes too, I knew that he was going to have a good impact once he made it into the first team squad. And I've said things about Jack in the past that I regret at this point, but I think that he proved a lot of us wrong, not just me. And he ended up in B tier along with Carlos Gruezo, Nico Chikiris, Miguel Trauco, Paul
Let's
Marie,
go.
Jonathan Mensah, Jeremy Abobasi, Matthew Hoppe, Jackson Newell, and JT Marcinkowski all made it into B tier. That's the most populated tier in the whole
Wow.
list.
It's kind of impressive. He's in there with both Nico and Jeremy Abobasi,
Yeah.
along with Carlos Gruezo, given that he was he was voted as one of the best players in the team.
If somebody told you that Jack Skane was going to be in B tier this year, like
I would have laughed. I would
yeah,
have laughed. He's one of those like super subs. You never would have thought like he would have made that big of an impact as he did. Given I'm still a big fan, but bias aside, he would have been a great super sub and not classified as B tier. So it's impressive for him.
yeah, and I think even saying super sub is a exaggeration of like our expectation of him at the beginning of the season because he was a sub at some points before, but he never really had a crazy impact on the game. He scored a goal here or two, here or there, but he was never like, oh crap, Scan's coming on. Let's see what he's going to do. But this year he definitely had that impact, and I'm super happy for him. And I hope that he does sign a new deal. He does have a bona fide offer to come back. So it's that's very promising, and I'm whatever I have to do, Jack. Whatever I have to do to get you back, I'll do it.
Same here. Count me in.
Give me a call.
Give me a call.
Yeah, but I think that's it for the stats. I want to give a huge shout out to Hameen for putting this together. There's way too much for me to go through in one podcast episode.
Maybe the next podcast we can talk about fan reactions to Lucci.
Yeah, there's fan reactions to Lucci. There's a lot of data on people's opinions on kits. So yeah, join the Tectonic Discord if you're really interested in seeing all this data, and then we can share it with you. And that will be in the description. Devin, you figure that out. You put the link in there so people can
Also it's something. Yeah.
So let's go on to talk about the roster moves. There was 23 players that were given a contract for this year, or kept their current contract. And there's some that I was surprised about, not just because I didn't think that they deserved one, but I just thought that their contract was up. For instance, JT Marcinkowski and Casey Walls were two players that I thought that they were gonna be gone by now, but I'm happy that they're here because they're good guys.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised here. So the names that I thought, there were definite chances of making it. Obviously, it was cool to see JT stay. Muni stay because he definitely deserves a good future here in San Jose, as we've already talked about. Tanner Beeson, good CB depth, although probably not a starter worthy player. Hopefully Mensah comes back. Looking to see what Mendoza, Medina, Takaris will do in the midfield. I'm really excited for those as homegrown players.
Right.
Jeremy Abobasi's back, or he's staying.
Dang.
Chance Cowell, one of the players to look forward to in the future, and I think you'd have an opinion on that, and I'll leave
Yeah.
you to it. And one of the surprising players here in the forward positions is Osemi Buda. We didn't get to see too much of him. He made is like 100 total minutes in the first half of the season. He was a one of those regular substitutes, but he didn't make too much of an impact, and he went down to Quakes too. And every game he played, he was an absolute star for them. So he's one of those in between players that we can send up and down as depth for either team, and I'm sure that's why the San Jose Earthquakes decided to keep him.
Yeah, I think when you're Leach, right, and you kind of look at your team and you see that Cade Cowell isn't performing where you want him to be. Benji Kanovich dealt with a lot of injuries that were, a lot of people may not have known that he had a bunch of injuries throughout the year, and that's a lot of the reason why he didn't play as well as he could have, or just didn't play at all. Um, Sonny Buddha is the guy that you want just in case. Um, and we wanted him to be more than that. We wanted him to be a player that was going to excite the league and kind of like make a huge impact, like similarly to how he did for Stanford when he came, um, and set the college ball alight. And I think that he's a player that has crazy talent and a crazy work ethic as well, a lot of will, but we just haven't seen any of that, manifest itself on the field for the first team. And that's unfortunate, but this may be his last chance. 2024, it might be it, and then we might see him go somewhere else because he obviously has enough skill and ability to play for a lower tier. He's torn it up for Quakes too. I think, again, don't quote me, but I think mathematically, I haven't quite done the math, but I've looked at the numbers. He, I think, has the most goals per minute for Quakes too. He has 8 appearances and 8 goals this season, and then last season he had 2 and 2.
That's very impressive stuff.
Those are amazing numbers. You don't see that. Um, but obviously, the caveat is Quakes too. But moving
Right.
on, a player that you mentioned just now is Chance Cowell. He's a player that people expect to be uh, the second chance for the Cowell family, and like to improve where his brother left off. Um, and I mean, I actually got to go to a game and watch him play because none of us have really seen what he could do. He's an unproven quantity, and you know, don't let me finish this episode without talking about it because that was a fun game with a lot of young prospects that I would like to go over. But um, yeah, more on Chance Cowell in a minute. Um, I would like to move on to players who didn't make the cut and are currently unlisted, and so therefore either completely gone or are still pending on a new contract. Um, so we have first off Jonathan Mensah, who I don't believe is going to be coming back, but could because he's still a free agent. Um, how would you feel, Devin? Because so for me, I think that if I'm Leach, I would kind of move on. If I'm being honest, as much as I like Mensa, I would move on because he's on huge wages, and also moving on from him would mean that we can bring in another center back and improve our squad, going forward and look more toward the future, rather than just like a quick fix right now, because that's what Mensa was brought in to be.
Right. And I totally agree with your stance that Mensa will leave San Jose Earthquakes. I think he will pick up another team. I'm crossing fingers that it's not LAFC, LA Galaxy, or Seattle Sounders. Hopefully, he goes back to the East, kind of like you said, with his family preferring like Ohio or whatnot. Um, as long as he doesn't, play for any of our rival clubs, I will fully support Jonathan Mensah wherever he goes. He was a class player. As a season ticket holder myself, I went to a post match meet and greet with Jonathan. He was super kind to the kids in front of us, a genuine guy to anyone who asked him questions and wanted to take photos with him. Um, definitely one of the best players that we've had, and it's unfortunate that we've only had him for a single season.
Definitely. Besides the great player he is, very solid center back. He's an amazing person, and I've told the story before, but I was hanging out with some of the Tectonic Takes photographers. Shout out Dario and TJ, and also Luis. He wasn't there, but shout out to him as well. Um, anyways, we're hanging out, and then all of a sudden, I see a very tall man approach, and I'm like, "Who's that?" Like, I'm just talking to the guys over here, and it's Jonathan Mensah, and I'm like, "Hello," and he says hi to us, and um, I guess he loves photography, right? So he takes pictures and he has a photography Instagram. Go check that out. Um, I don't have the handle, but you find it. Um,
It's out there.
yeah, it's out there. Um, but because of that, he struck up conversations with our photographers and talking about photography and stuff. And I happened to know them, so I was there. But they're kind of like, yeah, Jonah just says hi sometimes. But for me, I was like, oh my god, like this guy won an MLS Cup, and I was just like going through my mind, and then like, so he goes to shake their hand, and like they kind of like don't realize it. So I'm like, screw it, I'll take it. Like I'll shake your hand, Jonah, and it was like,
How firm was his handshake? Was it
oh, quite like
like
he
like a
goes for
rock?
it. Yeah, he goes for it. There's no fat percentage in his hand. It's just pure muscle. Um, and it's a big hand. He's a big dude as well. But yeah, he didn't have to do that. But there's been a few times after that incident where he, greets us, uh, and we're nobody compared to him, in terms of an importance to the club. But he still makes the time, takes the time to really make everyone's day. Um, and
Also, even show up to a Quakes 2 game. Like, he's not
right,
obligated to do that, but he does it anyway, and he
I don't
supports the second team while taking photos for them for his
right.
photography project.
I don't even know if like I mentioned that it was a Quakes 2 game. Like if it was a first team game and it was one of those games where he was just out, that
Hmm.
would have made more sense, like why he'd go. But no, it was a Quakes 2 game. I know a lot of you guys watching right now. You don't go to Quakes 2 games. Jonathan Mensah's there. Um,
Yeah, way to
it,
it's a good chance to meet a player.
it actually genuinely is. Lenhart, before he was signed to the coach, was always in the stands. Lenhart was in the stands. Bernard is in the stands. A lot of previous players were in the stands for a surprising amount of games. But anyways, we can go on and on about Mensa, but we have more players to discuss. Another player
Darn.
that it wasn't listed but is still in negotiations is Charco, and that surprised a lot of us because I felt like he had enough of an impact to at least be offered a new deal.
I love Trelko during the season, and I think the Peruvian fans will agree. Trelko is a key piece, which is funny because the year before we had Trelko's national team backup, which is now in the
Yeah,
Dutch league and just won the Dutch championship. So, um, shout out to Marcos Lopez. But anyways, back to Miguel Trauco. I really hope we re-sign Trauco. One, because he is a Paul Marie esque player, and out of the blue and out of nowhere, he scores absolute bangers. Um, Two, he's a solid player. He makes great passes. He knows his spatial awareness. There's so many aspects to his game that benefits the San Jose Earthquakes, and I think you and I talked about this on the podcast. Is the one thing that he lacks is his speed, and a big aspect of why we conceded so many goals in the second half of the season, I think, was specifically because of his pace, and he got outpaced, and players were able to speed right by. But other than that, I think Trauco is fantastic for us.
yeah, no, totally. I totally got lost. I was just thinking about Charco's goals. Um, what's funny is that when we play clubs, you and I, with our bros, um, when we want the corner taker to send it to the outside of the box for a volley, we call it do a Charco, and they'll send it to the outside of the box because that's his spot. Um, but no, yeah, I agree with you. I think that his age is starting to appear, and he's starting to get slower, and teams are starting to figure that out. But I still think he has a lot to offer. And if we can get a deal for him that benefits both him and the club, I don't think uh, I don't think that would be a bad thing at all. I'd be very happy if we could work that out. So if I were Leach, I would sign him. But
Honest, sorry, what before we move on, I think given his age, he might have to take a pay cut in order to stay in San Jose. I don't think Leach is going to increase his wages or maintain his current wages right now. I think if he were to stay, they would make him take a pay cut. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't get a re-sign in the midseason or late stage of the season, and why they're leaving it up to him now is because of that possibility that he can take a cut. And if he doesn't want to take a cut, I'm sure there's plenty of teams out there who are willing to take a little guy like Trauco.
yeah, and losing Charco wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, even though we were just singing his praises. We have Paul Marie, and I think that he could start for us. I think that he's good enough to do so. Speaking as someone who didn't get a midseason contract, Marie did, and that's for a reason. I think that the club trusts him and sees his value, where he can play not just right back but also left back, left wing, supposedly center midfield as well. Um, he's a Swiss Army knife, and he does every job given to him to a high standard. So um, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we did lose Charco. He's just one of those luxury players that we'd love to have. Um, but speaking of players that a lot of people aren't too keen on, um, there's Jamiro Montero, who has sparked a lot of discussion in the Discord for these past couple of days. What are your thoughts?
I think Lucci is right in not choosing Montero, not taking that extra decision to keep him on the roster. I think it's nice to explore that option because of Montero taking up that DP spot. I don't think any if many Quakes fans agree that he is worth a DP spot. Um, if he takes a pay cut, like we're hoping for Trauco, I think he'd be a great addition for depth as an attacking midfielder. Um, One of the issues Quakes fans specifically had, and I don't really have data specifically to back this up, is that he doesn't play in that cam position. He always moves himself out wide, out to the left hand side or away from the middle. So it's harder for the Quakes to make any central movement up the field and in attacking plays and whatnot. Um, Although personally, I think he's a dangerous asset either way. Whenever he's on the ball, he has nice skill. He makes good passes. Any forward pass he makes, it's fairly dangerous. And he adds that skill to the passing too. There's a couple highlight reels that I made on a separate YouTube channel, and there's a lot of moments where Montero he shines. He definitely shines out there. Um, so going back to him not making the cut, I'm not in disagreement. I think there are better players out there who can make a bigger impact given the wages. Um, and we'll see where he goes.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, right, where he's been in the league, he's played for successful teams, uh, similar to Mensa, maybe maybe to a lesser degree, but he has a good pedigree coming in, and then he has a great first season. I don't think anyone can take that away from him. He was one of our best players that season, and some say it might have um, deserved the offensive MVP. Um, but obviously that went to Jeremy Abobasi, who scored 17 goals that season. This season was a different story. Um, you know, there's probably a million things that could have gone on to make him play less effectively. It could be just the system doesn't suit him. But a point that I made in Discord, which a lot of people seem to agree with, is that it's not a great sign when your DP is kind of getting outshone by Nico Shakaris, who is a 18-year-old out of the academy, and you know that's not a knock on Nico, who is an incredible talent and he's gonna give anyone in that position a run for his money. But it does mean that the Quakes FO should be looking to kind of level up in that spot to kind of give Nico more competition and more guidance to grow into that role. Um, but also, like, on the flip side, he's not that bad. Like, he's a good player, and he does a lot of running off the ball. He makes a lot of impact on the ball as well. But um, people are kind of like acting like it's the end of the world if we sign him to a new deal. It's not. Like, quote, well, somebody in the Discord said, and I quote, "If we sign him, it'll cause a lot of chaos in the fandom." That's ridiculous. Because he's another player. He's a good player. I just don't think that it's that deep. If I'm being honest. Um, yeah. What do you think?
No, I agree. I kind of agree with the. Well, actually, I don't agree with that statement where I don't think it's going to cause too much chaos. I think it's going to cause a lot of salary cap chaos, personally, and I
Yeah.
think that's why we're getting a lot of like players like Jonathan Mensah, who's basically a DP, and we had to buy him down. I think
Yeah.
it's situations like that where I think we can just spend our money on better players elsewhere. Um, it's kind of similar to Matthew Hoppy. I know he didn't take any salary cap space because of his U22 status. But it's a point that you made, Abram. It's like if we were to bring back Hoppy, I don't think there's an opportunity to extend his loan. Therefore, we would have to buy him as a permanent signing. And I just don't think he's that type of MLS quality that we need on the San Jose Earthquakes roster. You know what I mean? He's a
Yeah.
great player. He's made an absolute, in my opinion, he's made an absolutely amazing impact for the time he had. But there are better options, definitely better options, and with a better price tag than Matthew Hoppy.
For sure. Two players who won't be coming back for sure, who aren't in renegotiation, are Hoppy and Akinola. We discussed their impact on this season. Um, Akinola didn't have any time to do anything, but he didn't impress too much when he was on the field, so I'm not too upset about that. Tommy Thompson is a very divisive figure. He was seen in Greece visiting his old coach Matias Almeida, um, and I'm not too sure how to feel because on one hand we all love Tommy, and I don't want to see him go, but I mean it's kind of time. I think that he's not playing very much here. When he does, he has a mixed impact. Um, I don't, I don't, I don't know. What do you think?
Um, God, I don't. I just. I'm a little confused as to like. Well, it's not even confused. I'm more conflicted
Right.
because I'm not in disagreement, but I'm not also in agreement. Like I think he has a chance. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what else to say other than that. Like I'm just not in agreement, and I'm not in disagreement. I can see the pros and cons, and I think I'm in favor of the pros for his case specifically. So um, I don't really know. However, I would like your thoughts specifically on the two homegrowns that we signed and now we're releasing, and who are Cam Sealy and Tingy.
Yeah. Um, so I want to make clear that we didn't release any of these guys. Their contracts run out. Um, and so we have the option to renegotiate a new contract, right? So we're
Right.
talking about
Sorry
all
about
these
that.
guys
Yeah.
who are gone, and the fans who might not, understand all this MLS jargon, but like, no, Tommy. He's like, no, he's not gone. He is in limbo, right? So these guys, most of them are in limbo. Hoppy and Akinola gone. They're not in limbo. Um, but Sealy and Tingy are definitely one of those guys in limbo, and it's um it's hard to say. So I don't think that Tingy is gonna get a place in this team. Um, he's a very good left back for Quakes 2. Very good is a very generous reading. He's been above average. He hasn't been amazing, but he's kind of he he's he suffices, right? Um, and so if he's sufficing at the MLS Next Pro level, he's not gonna be making the roster on the first team over Chaco or Marie, right?
Right. Or
Um,
even for Hoven for that matter.
yeah, Verhoeven has had minutes on the left. Verhoeven is a right back all out, but he's had minutes on the left because sometimes Dan De Geer loses confidence in Tingy, and Tingy is a very consistent player who gets the ball, releases the ball. He's made some tackles where you're like, that's a nice tackle. Like he clinched the ball, he's clamped it, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, this guy is like, we need to sign this guy. You know what I mean? And there was some times where I was like, why does he have a first team contract? Why doesn't he have a Quakes 2 contract? Because that's kind of his level. Like Jerry Ayon, Eric De La Cerda, he's kind of around that level, right? So for Tingy, I kind of understand why he's in this position. Cam Sealy is a different quantity altogether. I think that he could be a really good depth option for this team at center defensive mid, and that kind of puzzles me to why we kept Baldissimo. I don't know if it's just that Baldissimo's contract, the length that was agreed when we signed him, just continues to 2024, which could be the case. It's rare for a re-entry signing to come with a 2-year contract baked in. That's just like not common. But Cam Sealy has a lot of physical presence when he's on the field. He can play in many different positions. He played center back for a large portion of the season for Quakes 2 and did a really good job there. Uh, Sometimes outshining Casey Walls, who is a more natural center back, who is taller, faster, and all that. But Sealy is just he gets stuck in. He has no fear whatsoever, um, and I have a lot of good things to say about Sealy. And I'm always going to be honest about these guys. I'm never going to pull punches about Quakes players. So I think that Sealy deserves a contract. I think Tingy. Um, I would like to see Quakes 2 sign him. I would like to see him get a pro contract with Quakes 2 on a renegotiated deal because I don't know how their like wage structure differs like when you get a contract with Quakes 2 versus the first team. So that's my you know view on those two.
I think Tingy or Tingy, I think he should, I, just like you said, I think he should have a Quakes 2 contract because he does the job there. It's just, it's kind of similar to what you just said in that um, he 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 just does the job for Quakes 2. And that says a lot because, what is he going to do for the first team? I don't think it's going to improve that much. Um, so that said, it kind of does suck to see him go. Although I think he might have been one of those Stanford signings. Like we just have a strong Stanford connection,
Yeah,
and the fact that he was a homegrown player, I think for Leach it was like an extra player just in case, an extra depth player in that fullback position that has no additional roster space. You know what I mean?
right.
I think that's kind of my outlook as to why
Yeah,
he was signed with Cam Sealy. Um, although Cam Sealy is definitely a different perspective and a different talent, playing in a different position,
yeah,
and I think he's definitely warrants a first team contract at some point. And if the first team doesn't want him, Cam Sealy is a definite starter for Quakes too, and can see minutes in the future. But I think it's one of those things where it's just kind of like that Stanford connection, and
yeah.
nothing really past that.
I agree. Because they were able to keep eyes on him because he was from the Quakes Academy but moved to play for Stanford, and so it's obvious that they were able to see his development grow, and then decided let's bring him back as a depth option. Tingy is who I'm talking about. I mean, both of them have the same exact kind of path, but Tingy, I will say that I would prefer to see him start for the first team over Tommy Thompson at left back and uh, Lucci did like Tommy at left back during preseason, and that was let's not do that again.
No.
Um, Another player who I'll touch on briefly is Oscar Agrin, or Agrin. It's kind of weird. He's in a similar position to Tingy, except that I believe that he has a higher ceiling, and he does have a place, I think, as a depth center back for a MLS team. He could also go to Sweden, and I think that he could play for a team in Sweden like regularly. Um, because in my opinion, Sweden is not as good as the MLS. I could be wrong about that, but that's an option for him. So you know, Agrin has different paths that he could take, but there's a few players that he's behind right now for the center of the Earthquakes, and I didn't list him on this on my notes here, but we didn't talk about Nathan. Do we re-sign Nathan?
I do not think we resign Nathan, and that's several factors. The first factor including his injury proneness and how many times he gets injured every season. The fact that he's coming off an ACL injury. I just don't really see much significance of an impact for next season. Although he did play 45 minutes for Quakes too at the end of their season. I don't know if I'm allowed to say
It
that
was
or
a
not.
friendly.
It was a friendly. But he did play. He played quite a few minutes, so there is hope, in my opinion, that he could play and make an impact, especially if we don't sign Jonathan Mensah or re-sign him. Um, it would be so cool to see Nathan back, especially since I I bought my dad a Nathan jersey last year in
Yeah,
hopes that we sign him long term. But bias aside, um, he's a significantly um, amazing center back for us, and I can only hope that we support him in his recovery nonetheless, coming back from injury. Because I personally I just hate to see like a player, especially like JT, how he's got like two or three tears in his knee. And it's one of those things like if we didn't re-sign him to a new contract and we just threw him out into the world while he's injured, like I would feel horrible, and that's the same thing for Nathan. Like I don't want to see Nathan get hurt and then have him go through rehab, you know, by himself. I'm sure the league would help pay for it, but I just don't like to see that. I would love to
would
see.
they?
Would they? Yeah, it is MLS. We never you never really know. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things. And that point aside, a healthy Nathan and a prime Nathan is probably just under Rodriguez's level, if not at his level.
Yeah, and that's surprising to say because Nathan, when he first burst onto the scene, was getting like big plaudits from all over MLS, not just the Quakes, but he was drawing attention, and now Rodriguez is like doing better than Nathan was at that point. Um, so that's a big praise for Rodriguez there. We're running out of time, but I do want to touch on Quakes 2 roster movements. Jerry Ayon, Eric De La Cerda are both out of contract. They could be re-signed. We don't really know what the situation is there. I would like to see them both re-signed. Eric De La Cerda, actually, I wouldn't mind him being signed on a homegrown contract if that's possible because I don't want to see Emmy as the number 2 keeper. I don't think he's ready, and it would kind of stunt his growth, not playing games and having to be available for the first team. Because if you're the second choice keeper, you can't appear for Quakes 2 because of liability issues. I'm sure you can work out why that would be a bad idea. Um, uh, Also, confirmed to be leaving from Quakes 2 are Roberto Hadigan and David Serrano. And you and I are both very disappointed to hear about Hadigan leaving. You didn't see him quite as much as I did, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on him.
Well, I'm just really sad. I'm really sad to hear how they can go, and I was a big fan of him, and he impressed me a lot with his on the ball movement, his passing skill, the way he can read plays, unlike any other player. It's really sad. I was really hoping that like he can use the Quakes 2 as like a bounce back to find another like whether it be like a second team or first team, like almost like an older version of Max Arfston in a way. You know how he uses
I
Quakes
see exactly
2
what you're saying.
to come back to another team and basically find a suitable challenge to win MLS Cup and whatnot. I thought he'd be one of those guys, but unfortunately, Quakes 2 hasn't worked out, and really sad to see him go.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Arston because from the dynamic of the how Quakes 2 works, he was pretty much a direct replacement for Arfston. Arfston played as an inverted right winger, left-footed right winger. That's exactly what Hadigan was for Quakes 2. Hadigan had a lot of impact, but he struggled with fitness. Um, I'm not going to comment on his character too much other than the positive. I thought that he was someone who was always smiling and had a positive impact on the locker room from the outside. He had troubles with other clubs, before we brought him in. He was kind of ostracized at Sac Republic, and he touches on those reasons. But I don't feel qualified to comment on them. Um, but he was an amazing player, and I truly don't get it. I don't understand why we'd let him go when we had an option to extend his contract. Um, it kind of, I'm not gonna like start ringing any bells here, but it kind of worries me for the future of Quakes 2 and how competitive they want to be in the MLS Next Pro League, because they just made playoffs this year, and they're getting rid of a lot of the quintessential pieces of the team that did that. So if we're going to be a team that, if Quixu is just going to be a team that only plays academy guys and just purely just young kids like 16, 17, 18, that's great for their development, and I think that we should be doing that regardless. But getting rid of these older guys kind of makes it seem like that's all we want to do, and there's positives in that, but it means that the league success might suffer because of it,
I
unfortunately.
think a
And
good example of having older players in a team to be successful, Jonathan Mensah for Columbus Crew is a good
yeah,
example. They won MLS Cup with Jonathan at CV and is a star CV and a DP for them. So um, it, having older players is not a bad thing. And
right.
I'd like to touch up on De La Cerda for as being a player for the first team. I think that would benefit him incredibly. Like I don't even know how to put this, but that would massively benefit De La Cerda. Not only because one, he just had a child, and that would be paying for, you know, to live with his child and help support his family.
He's
But
21. Think about that. Could you have a
dude,
child at 21 and pay for it? I
dude,
can't
I
do
don't
that.
even know. I didn't even know he was 21. That's crazy. Oh my god.
Right. No, but like
Um,
that's kind of like the bar for older guys for Quicks too. 21 is one of the older guys. But
right, which
go
is
on.
insane.
Right.
Um, but I think he'd be a good backup to Daniel in in the first team, and he
Right.
would provide great depth ahead of Emmy, so Emmy can continue his development because he's only what 18,
Yeah.
18 years old, and he's getting called up to the Mexican youth national team. He's getting called up to the U.S. youth national team. Like there's a ton of opportunities for development, which is why I think adding De La Cerda to that lengthy list of um, backup players is perfect.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that bringing in Illustrator for the first team would be very much a Matt Bersano type signing. Like we want a keeper that is going to be on the bench, waiting and hoping Daniel doesn't get hurt, but would be very capable if something were to happen. Um, and I think Eric Illustrator, he has the mentality. He's a solid guy, and I think that he could do that. If we don't bring in De La Cerda, I would like to see a draft keeper, just someone who is going to be there ahead of Emmy, but like for the sake of Emmy, that if that makes sense. Because Emmy has a lot of potential, and we want to make sure that's cultivated correctly. Throwing him on the bench, waiting for Daniel, if not, he's not developing at all. Daniel isn't gonna lose his starting spot unless he gets hurt, and we don't want that to happen. We're not gonna uh, do things to anticipate that going down. And if he does get hurt, right? If Daniel gets hurt, then the next game Emmy is starting. You know what I mean. So he's not on the bench,
Right.
but he was still the number two in terms of who is going to be starting. And that's just how keeper uh, tier lists have to go because
He would
it's
also provide another homegrown deal,
he
which
was
adds absolutely nothing to the Quakes roster
right,
or their well, it would add to the roster, but the cap space.
right, which is always a smart thing to do. Jerry Ayon, I'm gonna be sad. He was the main guy who the PR team let me interview during my time as a journalist for Quakes 2. And he was always excited to see me. He always had positive things to say about his teammates and the fans. Um, and his family had a huge presence at these games. So obviously, without Ayon, there's going to be a big hole missing. There's a reason that he was team captain. Jerry, if you're watching,
Especially in your
I'll
interviews.
always miss you.
Yep.
And I hope you come back. I hope you come back because I would love to continue seeing Ayon line up. Also,
Abram's gonna
you know,
miss your interviews.
yeah, that's off the field stuff. On the field, he was a Swiss Army knife playing in like five different positions, and that's very valuable from a player. Um, but anyways, I wanted to talk about the academy games that I scouted before we end off. Um, so here's some names, right, that I want to go over: Chance Cowell, Tomo Allen, Rohan Rajagopal, Connor Owen, Eugene Kikuchi. That's a few players on the U17. Oh wait. One more guy who was
Oh,
actually very impressive at keeper, Chris Wen. I don't want to miss Chris Wen. He was very impressive to me when he was playing between the sticks. He did let I think 2 goals in, but he's kind of like an Ochoa type keeper where his reflexes are insane. And like we said on here before, his size isn't super impressive. Like he's not super tall or anything, which is rare for a keeper. But his reflexes and ability make up for that. And now I see why he was getting minutes or why he was getting picked as number two for Quakes 2. Definitely one to watch. Um, Chance Cowell, he's the guy that everyone wants to hear about. No one's seen him play, uh, except me, Crystal, and Dave from the Faultlanders. Um,
which I
and
saw
I'll
at a Sharks game recently. Funny enough.
oh yeah, oh, that's cool,
Yeah.
dude. You still have to take me to one of those. I've still never been, but
Really? All right.
yeah, I've
We'll
never
save
been.
that for another conversation.
Yeah, save that for later. Chance Cowell. So I took a few notes, and I do want to say that he is very fast. Um, and no one's surprised to hear that, but he was 15, right? He came onto a U17 game and was immediately the fastest guy on the field. And you can't say that about anyone. He definitely has special genes. Um, he is small. He is 5'6", maybe on a good day. Um, he's not built like his brother, and obviously his brother is a freak of nature, so we can't expect every 15-year-old to be built like him. Uh, but he's very strong, very physical player. He uses the size that he does have to his advantage. He does push his weight around. Um, the one thing I would say is like the standout trait that he has is that he uses his positioning differently to other players on the field, where he knows that he's fast and he's going to move the defense where he wants them to go. He all his movements are super deliberate, and he's thinking like a step ahead, which is a very good sign to see at this level. Um, uh, there's a few guys that I wrote down here. One guy that impressed me was Connor Owen. He was left back. Um, he was just very consistent. You look at him and you don't think that he's gonna, pull much off, but he got the ball and he was solid every time he got crosses in. He was deceptively fast, so definitely one to look out for. Rohan Rajagopalan is someone who has been appearing for Quakes 2 off the bench, and has a very good close touch. Tomo Allen, that's one that I'm super excited for. He's probably like 6'4" or something at 16. Very tall guy,
Wow.
but uses his size well. He jumps for everything. He tries to win every ball, but his close touch and control are very good for someone of his size. And honestly, other than his size, that's probably like the most impressive part of his game. His hold up play, which always love to hear that about our young players coming through. I think Tom Allen has also had national team looks for the youth team, so that's good. Um,
Very impressive.
I went to watch what's his name, Kadrian Spivey, and I didn't get to see him because he was called into the national team just before. So yeah, I went to go watch, but they had to save him for those national team games. But he's someone who's been getting a lot of whispers in the Quake sphere for the academy level and also the U.S. national team level. So that's a guy to look out for. His brother Jermaine is going to be playing for Quakes 2 next season, and hopefully we see Kadrian also making some appearances for them. So yeah, a lot to look forward to for the next generation.
All right.
But yeah, so I think with that being said, unless you have more to say, Devin, that's gonna make uh, that's gonna do it for today's episode of Tectonic Takes.
I do have
Uh,
one question for you, Abram. Do you think Osemi has a chance of leaving the Earthquakes, joining Quakes 2 or a team like Quakes 2, and pulling off a Max Arston?
oh, so say you want to compare Buddha to Arston, like his
In a
path.
way, or like a possible journey. Like, does Buddha have the opportunity to, you know, join another team, for example, Columbus Crew like Arston, and have the opportunity to compete for an MLS Cup,
And
considering
make a name for himself.
exactly.
Um, I think yes. I think that because right now you asked me that question. I'm thinking, Useni hasn't shown me anything for the first team to warrant that expectation, but neither had Arfston when he declared for the draft and was drafted, I think fourth overall or something like that for Columbus, and so I think that definitely he does. Arfston is a different kind of player. He's a workaholic up front, with coupled with crazy technique and a nose for goal. He's like a shark looking for a way to impact the game. And Osteni does have a lot of those qualities. He's always on. He's very focused on his goal. Um, but I don't think that he has the physicality, and that's not. I don't mean strength or anything like that. He's not as fast as Arfston, in my opinion. Um, and I think that is a big factor for these kind of players that play up front. Um, I think Arfston kind of covers more ground and therefore um, finds himself in better positions than Buddha, but it's hard to say. That's that's the what it comes down to. It's gonna be hard to say. There it has to be a right environment for Buddha. I've heard that he's in the gym trying to beef up. So that might mean that he might be playing more centrally. Um, but it Buddha's always been a complicated subject. So I can't really say at this point.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I
That
just
that
talked around
concludes
in a
that.
whole circle and was like, I don't know.
That's
um,
usually what the answer is at the end of the day. I don't
I
know.
have to rationalize what I think about each player and their abilities,
Right.
but yeah, so that's what I think. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff coming out today. and a lot of discussion that be had about the earthquakes that we haven't had in a few months since the season ended. And it was a really fun day, and I had fun talking to you about it.
Yeah, no, it's always a fun time having a conversation with you, Abram, and it's great coming up on the podcast and talking Quakes all the time, and just kind of enjoying the community as a whole, especially in the Tectonic Take server. You never really know what happens. One day it could be like a totally like meaningful conversation, and the very next day it's just complete chaos and everyone's yelling at each other for the funniest reasons and whatnot. So,
Yeah,
if you don't want to miss out on any of the fun, please join Tectonic Takes Discord. It'll be linked in the description down below.
definitely, it's definitely worth it. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time. Go Quakes!